Well, I'd like to welcome everybody for joining us on our first quarantine Q&A from Eastern Illinois. My name is Rich Moser. I'm the Associate Athletic Director here at Eastern Illinois. If you're looking at the Zoom thing, because I'm using football's account, I've got Jesse Walton's name underneath me. That is, Jesse is our new Director of Football Operations. So much more talented athlete than I am, so I don't get the two of us confused. On the tops, and I don't know how people see these at home. I know when I record it, I've always gotten confused, but our head football coach, Adam Cushing, has got the EIU flag behind him. And then our athletic director, Tom Michael, has, I'm guessing, some horse memorabilia behind him from when he had some horses a number of years ago before they moved into town. So welcome, gentlemen, to our first one of these. And we'll do this for about, an hour or so, and hopefully be able to answer some questions about where Eastern Illinois is at now, how we've kind of gone through this COVID-19 pandemic, and then how we want to kind of move forward here with the athletic department as a whole, but also with the football program. And so, Tom, as the athletic director, I'll kind of just start with you. And kind of, we've been doing this for about 5 weeks now, and you start to look at a calendar, and the weeks add up very quickly. I guess maybe walk the folks that aren't familiar from an athletic side, kind of how all this shook out. And I know you're in meetings, and maybe just kind of explain some of that behind the scenes stuff to them.
Yeah, it really started, Rich, in early March, and even when we were at the OVC basketball tournament in Evansville, we started having conversations with our ADs, and that's the first week of March, about what happens if this becomes something bigger. So those conversations happened then, and then the following week is when it really, really ramped up to the point where I think it was a Wednesday evening. Our softball team was getting ready to, they were going to leave at midnight to bus up to Midway to fly out the next morning for their spring break trip. And I was on the phone with Dr. Glassman throughout the evening, throughout the day. But then finally at about 9 o'clock, we made the decision not to send them on that trip. And then that Thursday is when the basketball tournament started to be canceled and everything like that. Looking back on it, it was clearly the right decision. Not that the softball kids wanted that to happen, but had we sent them down there, we probably would have ended up putting them on a bus on Thursday or trying to get them back here right away anyway. So that's when it really, really picked up and started to see the magnitude of what we were going to go through. And the first couple of weeks, it was extremely challenging because information was literally changing by the hour. We would be on conversations, on calls with the OVC or with our coaches or staff or whatever, and might get an email during that meeting and things change dramatically. So that piece of it has changed, at least in terms of the rapidness of how things were changing. Now we're just trying to manage, as you said, we've been in this 5 weeks. I think this might be the 6th, and just trying to manage how do we stay effective, how do we stay efficient, and with our coaches and our staff, and certainly Adam can address how we're doing that with our student athletes. But it's been interesting. I think maybe would be an easy way to describe it. Maybe not completely accurate, but a lot of changes, that's for sure.
Now, Adam, you talk about that from the coach's perspective. When news kind of broke down, Eastern was getting ready to go into spring break, and normally that would have been maybe a time where, knowing spring football is right around the corner, you tell your coaching staff, guys, go get 2 or 3 days to your family, to yourself, kind of get yourself right mentally, because spring football's, it's going to be a grind. We got a lot of stuff we need to put in. We got 15 practices plus some meetings. Instead, I'm guessing a lot of that spring break turned into, what are we going to do instead of being able to teach face-to-face? What is our new approach from there?
Yeah, you're exactly right, Rich. It was probably, for me, take 48 hours and just take a deep breath and try and digest it. As Tom said, it was changing so rapidly at that time that even it felt like making a decision on how we were going to proceed was going to be premature because we weren't quite sure exactly what was happening. Tom said it well. We were heading into a team meeting on Thursday afternoon to address everything that we knew, and as I entered the team meeting, Tom called me and gave me different information than I had 5 minutes before I walked in there, right? So it was just that, how are we going to adjust at first, right? And then once, as Tom mentioned, once it settled down and once we kind of had an idea of maybe some sense of how we were going to be able to proceed, it was exactly what you said. It was, how are we going to maximize this time? How are we going to approach it as a program, obviously as an athletic department, but as a football program, what we decided was we were going to say, what does this make possible? What can we pivot to and allow us to do something? So certainly we would have preferred to be practicing out on the football field, but when that's not possible, how can we teach well? How can we make sure we maintain structure for the young men? Provide still a very strong student athlete experience. Continue to focus on making sure that they do the right things academically in what was going to be a challenging space for them. And then how do we continue to push the program forward recruiting wise? So there was there was maybe a few sleepless nights over spring break, just trying to figure out exactly what the plan was.
Now, I think people understand that football, they see the X's and O's, but sometimes I don't think they realize how much behind the scenes goes into that. And I know while you would love to be on the field, on your defensive staff, you've got 2 brand new guys this year, and we did a conversation with them last week. And one of the things they said, this was really good for them. And I'll start with Adam on this, but also it happens with Tom dealing with our head coaches. This has given them an opportunity to get to know the young men and women who comprise their team in a different way. And it may actually end up being a better thing long-term, as opposed to having just that, I guess, minute contact they would have had out on the field.
Yeah. Again, what does this make possible? It makes possible our new coaches, all of our coaches, quite frankly, me as well, having opportunities to connect with these guys in different ways. We got young men on our team when we're on our, we've been in our football Zooms for the past few weeks, sitting there with a younger brother or younger sister, or getting introduced to a parent. And I think that was really, really important for Coach Odom and Coach Manning to have that opportunity as they FaceTime with their young men, to have them be sitting right next to mom at home and make that connection. I think it will certainly pay dividends in the long run for their relationship, and truly have the parents understand that we do care about them, and that especially the new guys have that true deep caring for how they perform, not just on the football field, but more importantly, what they're doing in the classroom to get themselves right.
Now, Tom, I put that out there for twofold. One, as the athletic director, we have a couple of new coaches on our staff. 2 of them, Sarah Thomas with volleyball and Ronnie Boembue, and I'm probably mispronounced that, our new men's soccer coach, and I will learn that. I will promise him that I'm doing the call with him like we did with football last week by Friday. So I've got two days to learn how to pronounce that. So they needed to learn to who the new players were on their team. But you also, as a parent, your daughter plays on the volleyball team. So you kind of see this from both sides as we're going through this, and how the coaches have been able to interact from a coaching standpoint as their boss, but also as, the parent of a student athlete.
Yeah, I think Adam described it very well, and it's a message that in our very first meeting, I challenged our staff to really take advantage of where we're at and what we have. Control what we can control, but more importantly, let's make sure we come out of the backside of this in a better place than where we were. And if we sit and cry about that we don't get to have our 15 spring practices, or volleyball doesn't get to have their spring workouts, or whatever it might be, Ronnie and the men's soccer team aren't going to be able to have those bonding opportunities. Hey, this is what we've got dealt with us right now. And as Adam described it, and he and his staff have been great at making sure that, well, let's get better. Let's figure out a way to get better. And so that was a message from the beginning, that we've got to take advantage of this that's presented in front of us. Otherwise, we're going to get run over when we do come out of it. But I will say, Rich, that that our coaches have been great. I've also challenged them to get to know each other better through this process. And as crazy as that may sound, is that we can't have face-to-face interactions, but we do have our coaches on a Zoom call every week. We talk about a lot of different things. We share ideas from a recruiting perspective, how you're dealing with things academically with your student athletes, the challenges that are there, and really a proactive approach to it. But our coaches have been great in terms of providing structure for our student athletes in different ways. And that's been probably as big of a challenge for us, because our student athletes are geared to be structured every day in what they do. And now all of a sudden, it happened so abruptly. You leave for spring break, and all of a sudden during that time you get another week of spring break, and now all of a sudden your life changes to where you have online classes, and you don't get to see your coaches every day. You don't have a weight strength training period. You don't have conditioning, whatever that might be. The structure has changed dramatically. And our coaches have done a great job virtually, whether that's setting up study halls, whether that's the volunteer. Our strength coaches have done a great job engaging with their student athletes. So that piece of it has been very good. And, we challenged them as, let's try to make this the best academic semester that we've had as well. How do we do that? Well, we've got to engage with our kids. We've got to stay on top of them. We've got to continue to try to find ways that we can help them. And I think that as we go through the process, and they've done that, we're a week and a half left, final exams next week, and hopefully the end results and all the hard work from our kids and our staff will show at the end of the semester when the grades come through.
Now, you talk about the academic part of it. I think I heard somebody wrote something to me a couple days ago where, while all of the young kids are the social media generation, we think they're always in their phones and things like that, they still do really crave that interpersonal connection, whether it's with their teammates, whether it's with their coaches from an academic standpoint, whether it's with their professors. You guys, in different concepts here, football with Coach Cushing, and then Tom from leading the athletic department, you have tried to make sure that that contact is still there. I guess from football standpoint, how are you guys kind of continuing to emphasize the academic standpoint of this and making sure that it is still kind of fresh to them?
Yeah, well, Tom just said it very well, right? His marching orders were, let's make it the best academic semester it can be, because that's what we can control. And that was exactly the message that we gave to the team. This is what's in our control right now. And the expectation is that we are setting a really high standard as it's been academically. Our 2 semesters here as a program, we've set Eastern Illinois football record at both semesters for team GPA. So we're expecting to raise it this semester, regardless of the situation, but this situation certainly accentuates the possibility of focusing on that. And so we're doing exactly that. We're talking about, we have, during the time, and this week's a little different due to NCAA rules, but during the time that we were able to do football and academics, we did a football in the morning and academic check-in in the afternoon, and the players held each other accountable. And that was, I think, what was really important was they all knew what everybody else had due, and everybody was accountable to one another, and certainly wants to see us continue to push as a program in that area. And I think everyone, as you see the whole team take pride in that, it's a really fun experience to be part of, number one, but it certainly is what you want. You want the players owning the culture and owning the academic standard.
Now, one of the things that I think you talk about the whole experience as a college athlete. You want the academics, which you're stressing just in a different environment. You want the athletic competition, which unfortunately that was taken away from them. We're trying to figure out ways to kind of work around that. But you also want to build life lessons and life skills. I think one of the things that's been unique to football, and a lot of our other programs have kind of picked this up, is being able to rely on contacts that you have not only as program alums, but also people that are superstars in the sport. And Coach Cushing, I'm going to have you talk first about, how you guys kind of put that together from the football standpoint. You talk about some who's names for anybody that knows football, let alone Eastern followers. But then I know I'll have Tom follow up afterwards, and the fact that you've seen other sports do that as well. And I know, Tom, you've been fortunate enough to jump in on a few of those and kind of maybe give you guys' feedback on the lessons that are coming out of those conversations.
Yeah. Well, so one day in the weight room watching the guys work out, and Adam Gristick, our linebacker coach, and, great linebacker here for the Panthers, we're just talking, and we look over kind of at the Panther head that's up there, and so we started kind of just going back and forth, and what it led to, over in his office, throwing ideas around and kind of putting the whole thing together. And, one of the most impressive parts about Eastern Illinois football is the people, when you walk in that lobby in O'Brien, the names are what you just said. They're a who's who of football, not college football, not FCS football. They're a who's who of football. And our young men on our team, I think, almost take it for granted when they walk by those pictures that those guys are cool, and it's been great tradition and all that. And so we just started talking about how do we engage them. And quite frankly, we had the ball rolling on that project before this all went down. We kind of had the scaffolding in place. And again, when you use the term, what does this make possible? This situation made possible the opportunity to get some guys to address the football team: Sean Payton, Jimmy G, Mike Shanahan, and then a bunch of other football names that have truly impacted. I mean, Tim Kelly's the offensive coordinator for the Houston Texans, one of the most down-to-earth, unassuming, ridiculously intelligent guys I've ever, interacted with in a very brief period of time. But I think the guys now feel how connected they are to that tradition, and now feel how powerful that tradition really, really is. And because of the pride that just was oozing out of all of those people for Eastern Illinois, because of the common experiences, right? What makes any sort of connection is common experiences. You got Sean Payton talking about, walking back to his dorm room in Douglas, and, Jimmy G walking off the field just wondering if he's at the right, all those things that they just did a phenomenal job of engaging, and then again, just literally gushing with pride about the Panthers. And so shared some tremendous messages, truly. I mean, Jimmy G talked about the work that you have to put in, and that how important it is to be connected as a team. Said that, that friends truly are the ones that win championships, right? That's how it works. That if you're truly connected with one another, you have an opportunity to win championships. Sean Payton talked about facing adversity, about, just his own personal journey about not being the starting quarterback, backing up his roommate of all things, right? And then overcoming it, and instead of running from it, running right into it head on and embracing it. And, Mike Shanahan talked about belief in leadership. I mean, honestly, we're going to run out of time if you let me keep going on that, what these guys shared with the squad. But it truly, the idea of what does this make possible? It makes possible the fact that Sean Payton's sitting in his house. Certainly he's in draft meetings, and unbelievable that he talked to the team for an hour. And for him to take that much time shows you how proud of Eastern he is, but also shows you that we're in a situation and we were able to maximize a situation. And I know for me personally, right, I'm always going to be able to look back at the time that I had spent that much time with Sean Payton, right, a legend. And I know I've talked to guys on our team that have said the same thing, not just about him, about a number of other people that they had an opportunity to speak with.
Tom, I'll segue into that, and a lot of the other sports have also done that. I know people know the who's who from a football standpoint, but there's also been some success in a lot of the other sports, and you've been fortunate to sit in a few of those meetings. Baseball, for one, they've had Kevin Seitzer, who's the hitting coach for the Atlanta Braves, sit in and talk with him. And when you start to think about the people that have come from Eastern, we talk a lot about football, but the success in a lot of other sports and in the professional world in general, business, academics, it all starts here at Eastern, and that's probably the message that I'm guessing they're giving to those young men and women.
Yeah, I think it's the opportunity to talk to those individuals, for those individuals to give back in an unbelievable, meaningful way right now. And Adam shared some of the messaging that some of our football alumni have shared. And, you know, when the starting quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers, who's in the Super Bowl this past year, jumps on the screen, and I did, in all honesty, candidness here, Kylie came in. She wasn't going to get on the screen, but she was listening. And then all of a sudden her phone starts blowing up because all the guys' Snapchats were going crazy with pictures of Jimmy on the screen. And to Adam's point, there's obviously a big picture of Tony and a big picture of Jimmy winning the Walter Payton Award and different things like that in our lobby at the football stadium. And in some ways you see that every day, and you do take that for granted. But then here's the guy that was just here 6 years ago, and he's talking to these guys in a very real manner. The same thing with Sean, and it made it very real, I think, for the guys, and it was incredible opportunity for us too. But our other sports have taken advantage of that, Rich, and it's not even just EIU alums. It's the softball team having the former UCLA head coach who's won multiple national championships. It's the cross country team having the most decorated female distance runner in the United States ever to jump on a call with them and talk about what she's doing. She's continuing to train at 46 or 47 years old and different things like that. But just the messaging and the opportunity that it gives our student athletes to hear from highly successful people. It also tells you about the world of athletics that, you know, Erin Howarworth hasn't ever spoken to this lady before, and she emails her, they get connected, and they want to give back. And so when people outside of EIU are doing that, and then our own are doing it, it just creates great opportunities. It says a ton about the coaches that we have on our staff that are able to do that for our student athletes. And it provides, the interesting thing is that it's very similar to the message that our coaches are giving. When Sean Payton's talking about the culture and he's talking about fighting through adversity, those guys have heard that same message for the last year, 15 months, but it came from Sean Payton. When Jimmy's talking about how connected the group needs to be, we're talking about that same message in the locker room, in the team room all the time. But now you got this guy, it's a different voice with the same message, and how powerful can that be? And it reinforces what everybody is saying. And just a real incredible opportunity, Rich.
I would second that. I don't think Coach Cushing has quite got to this yet. His kids may not be old enough, but Tom, you've coached your kids through youth sports. I coached my son through youth sports, and we were probably the stupidest people of all time at that. But the same message be given by a different voice resonated home.
I'm not so sure it just pertains to coaching, Rich.
Okay.
I've done some first and third grade basketball coaching, so I know what you're talking about.
I'm going to segue a little bit into some things, and this is part of the unknown. We had a handful of questions that were submitted to us. I know you guys have both had a chance to look at them. Some of the stuff that I sent you this afternoon, there's been changes since then. And I guess one of the things that is on people's mind, and depending on what day of the week you read and which person you hear from, is they want to know, are there going to be modifications to the football season? Are we going to play football? And I guess, Tom, you're in a lot of those meetings, so I'll start with you. But Adam, you coached in the Big Ten for a long time. I'm sure you're having conversations with Coach Fitzgerald, and they're probably having the same thoughts and discussions up there as they are at the Division III level. And you may not have answers, but I think any information that you know, or at least kind of how those conversations are going, I think that may answer some of those fears for people. So I'll start with Tom.
Rich, I know that you're recording this, so if it's played back tomorrow, there's probably going to be a different answer. But no, I think it's really part of the difficulty in being in my position right now is not having information to give to our coaches about what the future looks like, and that makes it challenging to lead in some ways. However, we've just tried to talk to our coaches about being nimble and flexible, working on parallel paths of what that looks like. Do I think that there's going to be a football season this next year? Yes, I do. What that looks like is a different question. Adam and I talked at the end of the day today about different scenarios of what that looks like, and we're going to have to work on that parallel path piece of what happens when we're able to come back to campus. How much time are we going to need to be able to play? Is that going to be June? Is it July? Is it August? Whatever that looks like. And then how do we react to that? So really preparing in a lot of different ways for what the fall is going to look like. I hope that in the next 30 to 45 days, hopefully, we'll have a better idea. I think we have more information today than we did a month ago. And I think that will be a case when we get to early June as well. And so, we don't have a definite. I do think that as we proceed into the fall, things are going to be different. If we think that it's going to be the same as it was this past fall, I think we're kidding ourselves and we're really naive to that. I think there's going to be changes in how we operate, how we have to conduct ourselves, and what O'Brien Stadium looks like on Saturday afternoon. What that all entails, we'll have to see what the parameters are that we have to work within, and then we'll work within them. All right, and again, continue to make the best of that situation as we move forward.
And Coach Cushing, kind of what are you hearing? I know I think I saw something today in the ticker at the end of the day that maybe the football working group is talking about having not knowing what the summer may be available and trying to make sure it's a level playing field, talking about maybe a 6-week training period instead of, I guess, normally you guys are at about 4 weeks right now before a season would start.
Yeah, I think, as Tom said, I think we're operating the best we can with making a few different plans. And I guess I'm not directly answering your question.
No, that's fine.
What exactly I'm hearing. I'm hearing everything that everyone's hearing, right? And been really fortunate to have Pat Fitzgerald is a close friend and a guy that's been a tremendous resource, and he's connected very well nationally and just as well respected as anybody in the profession. So I think he's hearing some things, but I think we all are, and I think all of it is quite frankly a little premature to say this is what we're doing. I think that the wisest thing is exactly what Tom has said to us all along, which is that prepare parallel paths. And I think in the end, as I've kind of gone through the exercise with Jesse Walton, our director of football operations, on what the parallel paths look like, and then Joe Orozco, our director of football performance, they're not that different. They're really not. The substance of them are very, very similar. It's just when. It's a matter of when. And Tom and I have said this, and I've said this to Tom. Division III athletics operates in that way a lot of the time, right? And so it's a very doable model. I think there's lots of models out there that are very doable, and so I think that it's just going to be continuing to do exactly what Tom said. Let's be nimble. Let's be ready to adjust to whatever comes our way. As long as we have some structure in place, I think it's probably premature to judge anything that we're hearing, because it's just how often it has changed. And you pay attention to the press conferences of the politicians across the country, and information changes rapidly because of the different models they have, et cetera. So at this point, we're doing nothing other than preparing the parallel paths and really being ready to support the student athletes the best we possibly can. And as Tom said, as we get information, share it with them immediately so that at least they know as much as we do. And that's really critical in this time when information's at a premium. Let's make sure that we're not keeping it from the people it affects the most, quite frankly.
Now you talk about information. Go ahead.
No, Rich, I think the other piece to that is we have to understand that there's the NCAA that's going to factor into this in some way, shape, or form. as they have a director of sports medicine, Dr. Hainline, and he's come out with a lot of information. He's going to factor in how this return to play, if you will, comes about. We also have the OVC. As a conference, how are we going to maneuver through this piece and be ready to play? Then we certainly have institutional issues that will come into play for the fall semester and through the summer and what that looks like. And then part of that is all going to be governed by the state of Illinois and where we're at. And talking to my colleagues in the OVC, some are getting ready to get back into the flow of things a little bit now. And as we know, here in the state of Illinois, we are in shelter in place for another month. And so there's a lot of differences that are going to come into play with how this all operates too. And there's got to be a lot of fluidity with that process as well.
Now, you may have kind of answered this, and you talked about there, testing is going to be the answer I hear. It's what I see on the news. It's what you hear from a lot of the medical experts, which none of the three of us are. But the university, I'm assuming, and from a conference standpoint, and Tom, you mentioned the NCAA, they're going to have some sort of testing plan or mechanism in place before they're going to feel it's safe for, student athletes to come back. But, what would kind of, I guess, be the impact if a player is identified, even with all these precautions, as having that? Is, I'm assuming plans are kind of, in the works right now, but we've been fortunate we haven't had that case. I mean, Eastern, I know, has had some young men and women that their family members have been impacted, but fortunately none of our 450 plus student athletes have been directly impacted themselves that we're aware of. And I'll start with you, Tom, and then Adam, if you guys may have some players that have dealt with that as well.
Yeah, I think, Rich, that's the challenge that I think everyone is trying to determine how this is all going to work when we come back to campus. We've got student athletes all over the country, whether it's in Chicago, whether it's in New York, whether it's in Texas, Florida, the West Coast, whatever it might be. And those individuals coming back whenever that happens. And what's that process by which that takes place? And that clearly hasn't been defined yet. We've got to make sure that, as you mentioned, the testing is there. But when we do allow students to come back to campus, student athletes to come back to campus, how are we going to ensure those things don't happen to the best of our abilities? That would be a bad deal if we allow that to take place. We don't do our due diligence, and then somehow one of our student athletes are infected with the virus when they get here, and then we've got a real issue with the rest of 110-member football team. And so we really got to make sure that we do everything that's in place. And I think you said it exactly right. The three of us aren't medical experts. We've really got to rely on those individuals to lay out the policy. We've got our team doc with Dr. Biggs and Jim Ney, director of our sports medicine group. They'll help facilitate those things along with our health services department on campus, and we'll work closely with Sarah Bush and so on and so forth to make sure that when that time is determined that they can come back to campus, that we'll have the safeguards and measures in place to make sure that it's a good situation for our student athletes. The health, safety, well-being of our student athletes is the utmost priority for us. If we can't ensure that that's going to take place, we're not going to bring them back to campus. It's as simple as that. We're not going to risk their health and well-being to come back if we can't ensure that that's going to take place. And then there's still no guarantees. If we think that we have the policies in place, you've heard too many examples of people testing positive for the virus, showing no symptoms. I talked to my mom last night, and she told me that there's a person from their church that's in a nursing home. He's 90 years old. He's tested positive, but showing no symptoms of it. So you have all kinds of different examples of how this virus is affecting or not affecting different people. And so we have to do everything we possibly can when that time comes to make sure that those safeguards are in place.
Coach, I'm going to ask you kind of a question here. When you'll have a number of new players coming in, either transfers or freshmen, predominantly freshmen, and how does this kind of impact them to the information that you kind of have, and then afterwards, Tom, from maybe knowing some of the compliance things, can chime in afterwards if we need to add anything. But from what you're hearing, how is not having an in-person academic into their high school career or their junior college career, if they're coming for them, how is that impacting them in terms of being able to get their transcripts in, test scores, those types of things? And then how are you able to kind of communicate with those young men, and then Tom, with those athletes that are kind of still in limbo in some of our other sports? And I'll start with Coach.
Yeah, well, I think the NCAA did a really wise thing, maybe a week ago or whatever that was, and come out and say, hey, there's no tests. So how are we going to hold people accountable to their test score if they don't have it to be qualified at this moment? It doesn't seem fair. So let's look at their GPA, right? And so I feel like because of that, I'm probably making an assumption, and we all know what happens when you do that, but I feel like we're all going to understand that there's going to have to be some additional flexibility in getting final transcripts. But I mean, I've had conversations with high school coaches. I was talking to a couple earlier today. High schools are working the same that the university is, right? There's just knowing my nephew attends a high school in the Chicagoland area, he has classes all darn day, right? So I don't know that we're going to necessarily run into the logistical issue. At least that's not something that we're anticipating right now, because so much of that is done by computer that I feel pretty good about being able to, to have a couple of clicks away and send it off to EIU and to the eligibility center and be in good shape. So as far as communicating with them, we've had one Zoom meeting with our signees where we just engaged them with the information that we had at the time, and truly just a firm believer when there's no communication, negativity fills that void, and a lot of concern. And so we just wanted to fill the void with, hey, this is what we know. It's not a lot, but we know that there's not going to be this stuff on campus. We know that summer school, all those things is going to look very, very different than it ever has in the past. And a lot of them were really excited about the opportunity to finish up high school and be here in Charleston early June, and, just sharing that information that, hey, that's not the direction this is going. So maybe start planning otherwise, and then we'll share whatever information as we get more information. And I think we're getting close to an opportunity to get back together with them and just kind of start pointing towards what does the rest of at least summer look like? How are we going to talk about getting ahead in classes, if that's something that they choose they want to do, is take some classes online and that kind of thing. So I think that truly some of the responses by the NCAA has allowed us to have enough confidence moving forward that I don't believe that will be necessarily the issue, nor will the high school functions be the issue.
And then Tom, you deal with this as the athletic director, and I know we talk about it on our senior staff meetings, and Coach Cushing kind of hit on it there, as the NCAA has come out with some language to ease restrictions, knowing that the high schools are going through the exact same things the academic situation at the university is.
Yeah, as Adam pointed out, I think that what the eligibility center did with the testing piece and has been very helpful as we move through, because there's an urgency going to be coming up here at the end of May, June, and different things like that to certify initial eligibility for those student athletes. I think that what I would say, Cindy Allman and Jen King and Rasheed Ward and our academic staff at EIU have done an amazing job. Kirsten Kleckner, all in our compliance office, has done a great job to continue to move this forward in a time when a lot of our coaches and our programs are still recruiting to get kids signed with the National Letter of Intent, for example, to make sure that the admissions process in our campus has been great in regards to that. We're still recruiting. Just because this is going on, we still have to continue to make strides from a recruiting standpoint. And our coaches have been very creative, just like everybody else is. But we have to take the initiative. I know there's programs, talking to my colleagues, that are not doing nearly as much as we are from a virtual standpoint, going through the recruiting process of talking to our kids. Campus has been great to get academic advisors from different programs to jump on Zoom calls with recruits. Our admissions office has been working hard. So it's really been a collective effort, and that's maybe part of the beauty of all of this, is seeing how we've all come together to move EIU forward as an academic institution, as an athletic department, to continue to show what a great place it is for our current student athletes, for our prospective student athletes in the recruiting piece, and say, this is a great place. We have great people. Look at the efforts that they're taking to be a part of this for you. And the people are what makes EIU such a special place. And when we're able to really push that message forward, demonstrate it through all these different ways virtually that we can make an unbelievable impression on our young people, that they know that they're going to be taken care of because of the people when they get here at EIU. And we've got their academics, we've got their athletic, we've got their personal well-being and success in the forefront as we go through that process. And that's what I'm extremely proud of. I'm very happy with the way our coaches and our entire staff and institution, quite frankly, have gone about this to really help in a challenging time, and we're taking advantage of it.
Now you touched on recruiting there, and I've had 3 or 4 questions asked on the Q&A here at the bottom, and a couple beforehand. And recruiting is always a big topic for athletics, but in particular for football. And this is going to be a kind of a multi-part question for you here, Coach. So kind of how you'll address it is, without spring football, it'll be interesting in the fact that how many transfers then become available, and the fact that a lot of these young men didn't have a chance to go through spring football. So they don't know that all of a sudden, I'm quarterback number 5 on a 4-man depth chart. So how many of, I guess the first part is, how many of those young men either will be out there to transfer down to, the FCS level, but also there may be some young men on your team that, they lost the opportunity in the spring to figure out where they are on the depth chart. Then the second part is, May is always a big, heavy month for recruiting. During the month of May, is your focus right now mainly on the 2021 roster, or are you guys still recruiting for this upcoming season as well?
Yeah, so a couple of parts to that, as you said, right? The first would be the transfers, and I think that one thing that we've seen since the advent of the transfer portal is that it's never light in numbers, quite frankly. So maybe it's a little lighter than it might have been, but there's lots out there, and so we've done some research on some of those guys, and we've got some relationships moving forward, and we've got a signee from a program that dropped, actually just closed their doors as a university. So we're still looking at any opportunity to make the roster better for the fall. And so as you talk about going into May, certainly the main focus right now is 2021, but we're never going to pass, as I said, an opportunity to consider to make the roster better, but it's going to have to be all of the right research, all of the characters got to check out. There's got to be a lot of that becomes really important. And then, some of that in this situation maybe is a little bit harder to find that information. So we just have to dig a little bit harder. But in the end, we're always going to be, a month late rather than a day early when it comes to doing the character research. So we're talking to some of those young men, and maybe talking to their coaches, and all the people in their high school are probably the harder ones to track down when you normally want to go back and do some of that background, guidance counselors and the like. But we're primarily focusing on the 2021 class. We have as you mentioned earlier, really strong numbers, robust with the 2020 class coming in already. So our space is really very limited. Looking at the roster earlier today, we don't have a whole bunch of spots ready available for the fall roster to maximize it. So being very selective, but then pushing forward full speed ahead with 2021.
One of the things also, you talk about culture. Culture is a big thing for every program. It's a big thing for an athletic department. We'll start with football, and I'll have Coach answer this, and then I'll have Tom follow up with a department-wide kind of approach and what he's seen from some of the coaches. Coach, you talked about a lot of new guys. You don't have a lot of spots for next year. You've had close to 85 to 90 new guys on the roster over 2 years since you've come here. 40 of those guys, give or take, won't be able to possibly be with the team until, late June, July, August. We talked about that a little bit earlier. What are some unique ways? How are you guys kind of melding that culture piece with the guys you have now, but also putting those new guys in the fold, knowing they're not going to be able to build those face-to-face relationships like you guys did last summer?
Yeah, well, our number one goal for this entire offseason has been to create connection amongst the program. And that's something that we talk about every single day as a staff. It's something that we talk about every single day with the players. And I certainly hope at this point, if you ask any one of our players what the number one goal is of the offseason, they better be able to say that out loud, because we pounded into their head probably more than they want to hear. But it's a great point that you bring up, and as we transition, as they graduate and become, officially a Eastern Illinois Panther, because there are some NCAA rules right now that restrict their ability to be involved in everything. But as they graduate and then matriculate, that's one of the questions we're waiting for, quite frankly, with the NCAA, is what does all that look like in terms of summer contact with those guys and summer integration with those guys in the team. We want to maximize it any way we can, because our coaches, our staff is doing an unbelievable job of, as I mentioned earlier, just finding different ways to connect, right? Guys are having family Fridays and, throwback Thursdays, and guys got to show, an old picture that means something to them, or, show a pet, or show off a skill, all those different kind of things. And I think it's critical to integrate those freshmen. In fact, we've got an exercise that we did as a football program within our small off-season teams. We call it our life craft, that we were intending to do as position groups, but we're going to save that one until we're all together, until the whole squad is together. So there's some really impactful things, and again, it kind of steers back to Tom's kind of parallel paths idea of, we're gonna, if we report at this date, this is how we're gonna start the connection. It's gonna look like this. If we report on this date, this is how connection's gonna look. If the NCAA says this for the summer, this is how it's gonna look. So there's a number of great ideas. Really fortunate to have some really good big picture thinkers on the staff, and I think that we're just ready to fill in those blanks whenever we have them filled in for us in some ways.
Tom, I'll let you kind of answer that a little bit as well, but maybe from a department-wide, in terms of culture, things you've kind of seen in terms of how some programs have bonded to kind of we were doing kind of a feature story on our website right now, and one of the questions that I asked was, what are you guys, to all the coaches, what are you guys trying to use during this time? And a big thing for every one of them is we're trying to increase our culture through this new technology, a new normal that we now have in front of us.
Yeah, I think it's something that we've talked about, the connectivity with your student athletes, and how do you make that happen in this virtual world, and what does that mean? Was on a call earlier today with a friend, and he said that what you put into it now will pay so many times over when you get them on campus and get them face to face. If you don't put that time into it now, how can you expect that to be much different when they get back to campus? So it's really important that we engage in that constantly, whether it's Friday date nights that I know, for example, the volleyball team has with their group, and they get together, and whether it's playing Pictionary, whatever that might mean, it's connecting with each other to become closer when we get back to campus and we get to see each other in person. I think departmentally, we really are stressing the communication piece. We're talking about really engaging with each other. We've had a happy hour, virtual happy hour. We'll have another one next week. Just trying to one, have some fun as we're all confined to our different areas at home and such, to just relax the mood a little bit. And I think part of that, and this doesn't have to do with culture, Rich, but part of it is there's a mental health piece that I really challenged our coaches to make sure they're conscientious about, make sure that they're aware when they're talking with their kids. We don't know. Adam talked that, hey, we're on a call with someone and they've got a younger brother with them. We don't know what their everyday life looks like when they're at home. Are they having to take care of some siblings? Do they not have access to Wi-Fi? What is that environment really look like when they're at home? Is all of a sudden now there's a house full of people and it's an environment that they can't study in. And so there's a mental piece that for our student athletes, we've got to be aware of. And quite frankly, we talk about it in our staff meetings about our staff too. I'm getting a little bit cabin fever, and today we finally have a really nice day. And I was on the phone with one of our staff members at 4:30, and I said, I thought maybe I would get outside, get a little vitamin D of sunshine today. And it was 4:30 and I hadn't moved out of this office. And it's just, I mean, that's the world that we're in, but everybody is feeling that piece. And as we go through this, we've got another 4.5 or 5 weeks of it too. So we've got to continue to be creative. We've got to continue to be positive, continue to work on ways that we can get better, and we can succumb to, hey, this isn't fun anymore, or hey, forget it. We've got to get out there and continue to get better, and we got to fight through it. And you know, there's no other way to approach it. Coach and I have had conversations about, well, we can talk about our kids maybe being tired of the Zoom calls. We can talk about them being tired of the structure. And so what? Now, I mean, that's part of what we've got. We've got to figure out ways to continue to be better. And Coach, I think, mentioned the word creative. Man, it's testing all of our creativity right now in a lot of different ways. But this is our world now. There's some people that work like this all the time. We're not used to it. So how do we continue to become effective, efficient, and better at the end of the day? And we've got to push that. We've got to continue to push that. And I will say that our staff have been great doing that. And I'm thankful. They haven't resisted. They haven't said, oh, woe is me. This isn't what I signed up for, so I'm not going to work very hard. I'm not going to continue to recruit. Our kids, they've embraced it in a really positive way. And that says a lot. When you talk about culture, that says a lot about us having the right people in our department, understanding what we need to do. And the bottom line is we're doing it for our student athletes. That's why we do what we do. And when we keep that focus in the forefront, that they're the reason why we do what we do, and on all of our decisions are to try to make their experience better at Eastern Illinois University, when we keep that in the forefront, we can do a lot of good things.
One of the questions that's come in here, and I think you see reports of people talking about not having on-campus classes in the fall. And then you've seen other universities. I think Purdue University's president came out the other day and he was adamant, we're having classes. A lot of this information, as we've talked, during this hour, is changing by the day, and it may change region by region. In some of the conversations you guys have had, has there ever been a conversation that there are sports without in-person academics that you have heard, or is that so far down the road that it doesn't even need to be addressed right now? And I'll let Tom start with that, because he's probably that's probably an AD president conversation more so than if it was up to the football coaches. There's probably a much different answer.
Yeah, I think that piece, Rich, really it goes back to a little bit what I talked about earlier about the health, safety, and well-being of our student athletes being the most important thing when we bring them back to campus. And if there's a scenario where we continue to be all online, there's a reason that that's being done. And that would be because we would prefer those students not being in Charleston on our campus. It would be difficult to comprehend, I think, to say it's okay for our 110 member football team to now be here going through those exercises of practice and meetings and so on and so forth. So, and then on a Saturday, we're going to line it up in that sport. There is a bit of physicality in that sport that would say, how healthy and safe is that? And so, I think there's a piece here that says, man, we're early for that. I do think in the next 30 to 45 days, that picture will become clearer as we get through that. In my mind, and again, not a medical expert, but the worst thing that could happen is we bring folks back too soon and something all of a sudden Charleston or EIU becomes a hot spot. That would be a disaster for everybody, and nobody wants that. So we've got to make sure that, and Dr. Glassman and I are talking about those things and where EIU is at as an institution, where we're at as an athletic department, the conversations with the OVC, what impact that all has with it to make it work in a way that health and safety of all of our students, but our student athletes are first and foremost.
And then the next thing you talk about what we were able to do for the kids, the student athletes, things like that. What kind of things can parents, can grandparents, can they be doing to help, support the young men and women right now that are at home and that are going through this? And, it would always make a plea that, you can always help through the Panther Club and things like that. Those types of things help to benefit, scholarships, meals, those types of things for the teams. But, in their home environment, what kind of things can they be doing? Is it on June 1st, if we do this, do they need to be ready to go? Or is there kind of a different message parents should be sending? I'll start with Coach, because he's the football team would be the one probably ready to chomp in to go at the bit. Not that the other sports wouldn't. With some of the physicality Tom talked about, their timeline may be a little bit different than some of the other sports, but then from an athletic standpoint, I'll have Tom, talk about what kind of things that they can do to support the young men and women, but also the program as a whole.
Yeah, I think certainly what can parents do is we've been super fortunate. We've had some communication with parents, and the parents of our young men are fully on board with the structure that we're working. As Tom mentioned earlier, these are structured people. These are people that have thrived their entire life. They're Division I athletes because the structure they've been in. And so I think that's what has been really refreshing, is that the parents have embraced that, have understood, because it's hard, right? When your student athlete comes home, okay, take your brother over there. And in some cases you have to, but they have to do the right things academically still. That's what's most important. Between really now, in the next couple of weeks, we've got some really important academic weeks to finish strong. And then might be the same case in the summer. It might be online classes, but academics needs to be the priority. And then just continuing what parents always do, is just finding ways to support their young men going out and finding time to get their workout in, if that's what they choose to do, if they're healthy enough to do that. And I think a big part of it is something that Tom mentioned earlier, the mental health side of it. I think Division I football player can seem like that real macho superhero in some cases, right? But this is a challenge for all of us that we need to just make sure that we're still talking to them and not accepting, yeah, I'm fine is the answer, because every 18 to 22-year-old young man will say, yeah, I'm fine, and when you first ask how they're doing. So just continuing to support them and have the student athlete experience be the most important. And then as far as moving forward, I don't think that to what Tom said, Wheels Up isn't happening at any point this summer, or at least not June, July, like we've been expecting, right? I think that the most prudent plan is to think it's late July or August, and so how can we create structure? And that's what our job is as a football staff, is to create the structure within the NCAA rules to get them prepared for that, and then we've got to do a great job, but quite honestly, of sharing that with the parents so that we're all working together for what's best for their young man.
And then Tom, I'll let you kind of chime in on that on people. We have football supporters on here, parents of people, young men that have already signed, parents of young men that are on the team, alums, but also we have some Panther Club members and supporters. What kind of things can they do to kind of, help support during this time?
Yeah, I think from a parental standpoint, the challenge becomes when we're able to get back on campus, whatever sport your son or daughter might be in, helping prepare them to make sure they're in the best position to be able to compete when they get to campus. And so there's a tremendous amount of self-discipline that has to take place right now. There's accountability that's taking place within a lot of teams of, hey, it's voluntary workouts, but as a team, we're going to do this together. And making sure that, hey, when we do get the green light to come back to campus, are you ready to compete, particularly our fall sports that will start? And so supporting that from a parental standpoint, I think is very healthy, and sometimes maybe a poke and a prod is needed as well. And I think from an athletic department standpoint, we always appreciate that assistance, especially when we're not there to provide that structure. And then from the donors that we have, we've got a great loyal donor base that has been tremendous over the time that I've been here and beyond that. And so, we know this is a crazy, this is uncertain times that are going on in all of our lives. And we know that we're going to continue to move forward. And we're trying to reach out and just communicate with our donors at this point in time with a lot of thank yous. We know what they've done in the past, and are we going to continue to need support in the future? Certainly. But we also know that the future is going to be different than what we've been accustomed to in the past, and what that means in different ways and in different levels. We know we're all going to have to adjust in that aspect, but we still have 20 sport programs. We have, as you mentioned earlier, Rich, 450 plus student athletes. We're still going to have athletics at EIU as we move forward. And all of those things are important for everyone, not just the three of us who our livelihoods are surrounded in college athletics, but we feel that athletics is an important component of the institution. We feel that athletics is an important component of the community. And we're supporting the community. We're supporting our family of EIU Panthers. And that's what I think is exciting as we move forward to continue to embrace that philosophy and that process with all of our loyal folks, fans, donors, parents, student athletes, staff, university, everybody who's been part of this process of building it, growing it, and continue to see it move forward.
Now, with the spring semester almost over, I think the last thing any college kid wants to hear is summer school. That's right around the corner. Now, the new environment, normally Eastern would end, the kids would take finals. Most of the sports would cut, except for the handful that were still in spring competition, which is not happening right now. They would cut the kids loose from, I guess, what you would call mandatory team activities. They can kind of still be around, lift, run, etc. Summer school is going to look a little bit different this summer, I guess. Tom, first of all, from you, from an administrative standpoint, what does summer school kind of look like? And then to the second part, for the teams that are allowed to then have normally what they would see in-person team activities, football, I think there's one or two other, basketballs can have those. What are those limitations now to incoming players if they can't have an in-person type summer school? So Tom talked to it from what does summer school look like, and then Adam, the way you guys are going to address it for football would be very similar to how any of our other sports would address it that would be in that same situation.
Yeah, Rich, summer school will be online at EIU, and with that being the case, we won't have student athletes on campus. So that creates something much different than what we've had in the past. Typically, we would have a number of our student athletes back working out, training, etc. That's not going to be the case. So it is going to look much different. I think right now, what we've got, and this is what will continue to change, is the NCAA provides guidelines the week before finals and the week of finals. So we have some restrictions in regards to that. Then we've been given information what we can do. For us, it'll be, I guess, May 8th through May 31st. And so that's the block of time that, we talk about parallel paths, but we don't know what happens on June 1st. And we don't know how that's going to be impacted, what changes it's going to be, how many hours we might get to work with kids, what limitations are going to be in terms of can it be football related, or what that looks like, or any of our sports for that matter. And so we've got a short window here that we can plan for, and then we'll have to adjust. And my expectation is that sometime in the middle of May we'll get another update as to what that looks like for the summer too.
Yeah, I think Tom just hit it on the head. I think that probably the biggest change this year is that May availability, right? Because there's never been countable athletically related activity, right? Our acronym CARA, available after you're done in May, or more appropriately, that you have to choose your summer contact weeks. You get to choose 8 summer contact weeks. Well, the NCAA came out and created a rule that said the entire country can have the remainder of May, outside of the week before finals week and the week after their finals week, to have time with your student athletes, because they acknowledge the uncertainty in the future, right? They acknowledge that they're not quite sure what June and July look like across the country. And so that's something that we're going to take advantage of as a football program, is use those hours with our guys and use them creatively, as we keep on using that word, use them in ways to continue to engage them. Virtual time is the way we talk about it, is virtual time is time and a half, right? An hour of normal time is an hour and a half on virtual time. So we're going to maximize the use of those hours without just boring them to death, but we're going to go into it believing that our last day that we'll have contact with the young men until August is going to be May 31st. And it might be different than that. We don't know, but that's the most clear path, right? You talk about parallel paths. Well, those parallel paths are off in the future. All we can do is walk down this one that they've cleared for us at this point. So we're going to walk down the cleared path at this point. And then, as Tom just alluded to, hope that in May we get some really clear direction on what June can look like. And, whether that means that somebody has to enroll into summer school in order to be part of those meetings, we don't know, because that's always been the case. You had to be in summer school on campus in order to be part of any of that activity. But that certainly seems a little bit different, right? Is the kindest word I can use for that, right? Is different. So is the NCAA going to hold that stance? We don't know. So how are we going to, it's going to be just prepare to adjust, right? It's prepare to adjust. We get that mandate, then we'll go. And then the great part is, if they can't be part of the meetings, as you mentioned earlier, I could see it up in the corner of my screen here, you're hitting record. We can hit record on our meetings, and we can then just send them off to the players. That has always been legal. So we're going to have different ways to engage the young men. It's going to truly come down to what we continue to hear and how the NCAA continues to form the right path forward for everybody.
We've just got a couple more minutes here, and I guess one of the things we'll change this a little bit differently. Kind of, you guys been locked in the house now, or the stay-at-home, shelter-in-place, whatever there's probably some not live appropriate terms people have used for that as well. What are you guys most looking forward to getting back to your normal? And kind of, Coach, what have you heard from, what are the guys most looking forward to getting back to? And Tom, you've got a college-age daughter on the volleyball team. I'm sure that her sentiments are very much the same as some of the things that Adams players are. What are you hearing that they're most looking forward to getting back to?
Well, I think we see it every day. This week it's 9 a.m., but previous weeks it was our 8 a.m. Everybody would log into the same screen on Zoom, and everyone would see everybody's faces, and the banter that would go back and forth is definitely not live appropriate at this point, right? So I think they know they truly just miss being around one another. So I think that whenever that is changed, I think that's something that all the guys are excited about, the opportunity just to be back together and doing the things that they love, because they have put a lot in. Incredibly proud of what they put in this off season together, and we pushed them really, really hard when we had them in person, and to a man they responded, they leaned on each other, and I think that's what they're missing most, is that leaning on each other to just keep on pushing through. As Tom mentioned earlier, the wonder and the beauty of athletics is those connections that you make, is that the best distance runner of all time, just by virtue of connection to the sport, will come on and talk. And these are guys that have been just working their tails off together. So they just want to be back together.
Yeah, Rich, I would agree that, we're all missing that social interaction. And to think that 18 to 22-year-olds aren't craving that piece either, I think would be naive, and so that's the aspect. I think it's just, in our world that we live in and that we get things done with. Part of what we do is pop across the hall and have a conversation, meet somebody in the hallway and interact. It's being able to when you see someone in the hallway, ask them how they're doing, and now it's via Zoom, and it's clearly not the same. So it's those personal touches that I go back to what makes our department, what makes EIU really good. And you don't have to like everybody that you work with, but I tell you what, if you enjoy them, you're going to do a lot better job. You're going to enjoy coming to work, and everything's going to be better. And I mean, I don't think there's any question that's the part that is missing is that interaction. And I talk to Adam almost every day, every other day for sure, on different things that come up, and it's the same thing. But to Adam's point, I think it's the efficiencies that make this virtual piece. I was talking to somebody today, and they said, I have an hour phone call, just about every day with my boss. And part of it is because you take for granted that 5-minute conversation that you walk across the hall and talk to them about getting something taken care of. You go get it done, and you don't realize, but you're doing that 5, 6, 7 times a day. And now all of a sudden it's through one call, because you can't call them every time you have one little question like that. So those are all challenges that we all have. But I think, I said it earlier, we're in this for our student athletes. So getting them back on campus and interacting with them, certainly there's times when it's nice when campus is quiet, but I think we've run that course long enough now, and we're ready to get it hopping again.
We had about 100 registered participants for today, and I think a few people were able to double up or triple up maybe on their Zoom. So our content and message might have been more than that. I guess final words of wisdom from you guys, and then I'm going to end one. I've got a quote from Mike Monsell, who is, I wouldn't say that he's quite Mike Leachish in terms of his quotes, but after you hear it, it'll make you think that sitting down with him may be like having a conversation with a guy like Mike Leach. But kind of your each final parting words of wisdom here to the people that have been nice enough to give up their Tuesday evening and tune in with us. And I'll have Adam start first, or I'll have Tom go. There you go.
Well,
Nope, go ahead,
I'll go ahead, and I'll just say I appreciate the people that have taken the time to do this. We weren't sure how this might go, and when Rich and I talked about it last week, thought it was an opportunity to reach out and interact with folks this new virtual way, and to so many folks that have been loyal to us. We wanted to be able to have an opportunity to interact with them. I hope it's been enjoyable. It's been for us, for me, at least in that regards. And I would just say that let's make sure that everybody stays healthy, stays safe out there. If we take care of those items, we'll be able to get back much quicker and sooner. And that's ultimately what we all want. But super thankful for our staff and our student athletes. And the folks that joined tonight, thank you very much. And we look forward to seeing you real soon.
Yeah, I echo a lot of that. Obviously, just looking over at the names, a lot of our players' parents, a lot of our signees' parents that joined, and that was the point, was an opportunity to really fill in that void with as much information as we possibly could, and just really, absolutely thrilled with the turnout. And then just thrilled with the way that all of the young men have handled this. And we've been really, really proud. We talk about it as daily as a staff. We've been really proud of how they have handled it and how they've showed up to work every day, and how they've showed up. And 1 week, academic reports are good, and the next week they're better, and the next week they're better. And that's just critical. That it's a testament to all their homes that they come from, that as they've been at home, they've maintained the phenomenal trajectory in the classroom. And then, just, I guess from us, just we're continuing to really push the envelope, do everything we can to move the program forward, and be prepared to do everything we possibly can to prepare their young men for life after football. And don't get me wrong, I want to win all the games in the fall, and I'm looking forward to the time that we can start really talking, very seriously about what those games are in the fall. But the big picture of this thing is preparing for life after football. And I think the young men have learned one of the most valuable lessons ever of how to be adaptable and still respond in a really positive way. And I think that's been what has been just exciting, energizing. You can sometimes have that mindset that, man, I keep looking out the window on a day like today. I kind of did the same as Tom. I kept thinking, boy, this is nice. And I hear a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old and a 5-year-old go running past the window thinking, man, it's nice out there. But it is really energizing for the way that the student athletes have been. And we're just excited to keep working as hard as we possibly can for them.
Now, the quote I'll end with, I had asked Coach Monsell to kind of in those sent out something to all the different coaches and said, what are you worried about moving forward on this? And his response, if you've ever met Mike Monsell, you'll understand this is typical him. He said he worries about magnetic forces on Earth that in theory could change the axis we live on, his early onset of Alzheimer's, and whether the Fountain Mountain Dew at the Lambos is going to work in the morning when he goes to get a fill-up. He said, other than that,
Coach Monsell.
Other than that, we will deal with whatever comes. That's how we do it at Eastern Illinois. And I think that kind of sums it up, is that, we'll deal with it as it comes along. I think every one of the coaches that we've had, Coach Cushing and his staff on here tonight, and then Thomas talked about the other staffs. Every one of them has been very adaptable in finding new ways to reach out and embrace our student athletes and make sure that they still have the best college experience that they can have even under this new normal.
Very good. Rich, thank you very much.
I'd like to thank you guys. Thank Coach Cushing and Tom Michael, our athletic director, for joining us today. I'd like to thank all the participants that jumped on. Thank you to the Panther Club for pushing this out. Also to the football staff for pushing this out to their group. We will have this recorded and available on the YouTube channel sometime tomorrow for everybody to listen to. Thank you, and everybody stay safe and have a great night.
Go Panthers.